Good evening and welcome to the John F. Kennedy Jr. Forum at the Institute of Politics. My name is Mira Sholvar. I'm a freshman studying applied math and government at the college, and I'm a member of the JFK Jr. Forum Committee. Before we begin, please note the exit doors, which are located on both the park side and the JFK Street side of the forum. In the event of an emergency, walk to the exit closest to you and congregate in the JFK Park. Please also take a moment now to silence your cell phones. And join me in welcoming Harvard Kennedy School student Bea Toribio.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to see these people here on a Friday afternoon. And I'm more honored to welcome you to the comeback of the Latin American Conference at HKS after a 5-year pause. This year, woo! This year, the conference is titled Harnessing the Potential of Latin American Cities. And we will bring together policymakers, entrepreneurs, academics, and change makers, along with more than 150 students from over 10 universities. Through this conference, we will delve into the challenges our region and our cities face, from economic inequalities to urban resilience. But as the name of the conference hints, we are here to focus not only on the challenges, but on the immense potential Latin America holds. Our people, resources, and creativity are some of the greatest assets we have. One clear example of this is the work done by the IDB Lab, the Innovation and Venture Laboratory of the Inter-American Development Bank Group. Their mission is to empower entrepreneurs and fuel the enormous creativity that thrives within our communities. They remind us that innovation is not just a buzzword, it's the key driver of economic growth and transformational change. And speaking of transformational change, I'm thrilled to kick off this conference with two inspiring women who have been driving impact on both regional and global stages. First, we have Irene Arias Hofman, CEO of IDB Lab since 2018. Before joining the IDB, she spent 20 years at the International Finance Corporation, the private sector arm of the World Bank Group, where she managed the Financial Institution Group and oversaw the Latin American and the Caribbean region $16 billion portfolio. Her focus has been on innovation, technology, venture capital, and organizational development. Joining her as our moderator is Fatema Sumar, Executive Director of the Harvard Center for International Development and lecturer here at the Kennedy School, where she teaches policy design and development diplomacy. Fatema has spent her career working across government, civil societies, and global development, with leadership roles at the US Millennium Challenge Corporation, the State Department, and Oxfam America. She's also the author of The Development Diplomat, where she shares insights from her work in nearly 17 countries. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Irene and to Fatema.
Hi, everyone. Happy Friday. Well, we're very excited to be here. All right. You guys excited to be here?
Yes.
Okay. Excited for the snow? Yes. There's more snow coming. Don't worry. It's Boston, guys. Winter jackets. Irene, welcome to Boston. Welcome to the Harvard Kennedy School. Welcome to the kickoff of the Latin America Conference. We're really excited that you're here. Thank you for taking the time and coming up. We wanted to have this conversation today because there's so much opportunity, there's so much buzz about, as we think through Latin America and the Caribbean, as we think through what the next decade has to offer, we want to make sure we're grounding the conversations here at Harvard around the opportunities we see in the region, the potential, and we want to talk about some of those challenges as well. So what better person to kick off this conversation than Irene? I want to scene set before I turn to you. I want to make sure that all of us have the same understanding of how the exciting work that the lab is doing here today. So with your permission, I'm going to just read a little bit from the press release that just came out last year from the annual IDB meetings. And then I'd love your reaction as the CEO of the lab to your priorities and what you see going forward. But let me scene set for all of us here today first. So during the 2024 annual meetings of the IDB and IDB Invest, member countries approved the proposal for IDB Lab, which Irene is the CEO of. This is IDB's innovation and venture arm to enhance its operating model and become an innovation hub for development. This approval allows IDB Lab to seek $400 million in new funding to be deployed between 2026 to 2032. It is going to seek to increase impact at scale by aggregating actors and resources around development issues where entrepreneurial innovation can make a difference, but does not yet have market support to do so. All right? That's a pretty incredible challenge and opportunity. Would love to hear how you're thinking at a leadership level about the lab. And thank you so much once again for being here with us today.
Thank you, Fatema, and to everyone in the Institute of Politics and CID. Thank you so much for hosting me here, and Bea, thank you for the great preparation. And I wanted to begin by unpacking a little bit what Fatema just mentioned in terms of this headline of the increase in our funding base and what it means and why we do what we do. So first, if you see this picture here, being in the innovation and venture capital arm of a multilateral development bank is a little bit like having a bit of a startup mindset within a big bureaucracy of a multilateral. So we have to constantly stay agile and be that little fleet that is going to make those bets that require a lot of kind of what-if mentality, that require a lot of risk-taking, that usually is lacking within a public arm or even within the mainstream private arm, which is IDB Invest. So that's our role. Our role is to be that fleet that is going to take those bets that are just outside of the realm of the risk appetite of the other two sister entities that we have under the umbrella of the group, but to do it in a way that is not innovation theater, in a way that is not just spray and pray and being in love with solutions, that is really rooted in understanding what are the main challenges in the region and a common strategy. And our common strategy is guided by addressing poverty, addressing productivity, and also addressing the climate challenge. So our aim is really to move with our actions the direction of the big vessel, because in terms of magnitude, we deploy about 100 million a year of our own capital and core mobilization, and then we have indirect mobilization of about 300 to 500 million a year. But the big vessel, in our case, with the public arm and Invest, today they do roughly between 14 billion of public financing to governments on the public side, about $9 billion in the case of IDB Invest to the private sector, and that's going to grow a lot with the capital increase that also our sister entity IDB Invest got, which is 3.5 billion. They're going to be deploying about 19 billion of capital in the next few years. So that's a big leverage that we can have if the seeds that we plant are actually connected strategically to where the direction of the ship is going, and that they can grow that. So that's number one in terms of like how this all fits together and why we do it. What are we doing? These are 10 challenges that we've identified for the next few years, where number one, we're passionate about. Number two, we feel there is a huge addressable market. And number three, we feel we have a very strong comparative advantage as lab because technology and innovation are ripe to disrupt and bring solutions that are otherwise going to take very long or do not exist to address those challenges. I'll just say maybe a couple of things about the financial access one, which, given that the focus of also in these days here is on urban, it affects so many people in urban cities, right? More than 45% of people in cities in Latin America and the Caribbean did not have access to a financial account until COVID hit. COVID hit, now that dropped to 25%. It forced people to send money digitally. It completely created a spike in the adoption of digital payments. And digital payments, as we know, are kind of like that little door that then leads to further financial inclusion and opens up the door for then credit products and savings products and other financial products. So just an example of where we feel that we can have a very deep impact in terms of the what. And then happy to get a little bit more into how we do what we do.
Well, so let's build in on what you just said here. So if I look at the numbers, when you think about this influx of new capital that both the lab has, but also with your sister parts of the agency and the bank, the lab anticipates that you're going to reach 33% more people and triple your deployment capacity to about 1.2 billion in 7 years. There's a massive debate in the broader development sector right now about how to mobilize capital, how to take it to scale. The US may not be a model to learn from in this exact moment, but for Latin American countries in particular, what makes the lab's value proposition unique? I mean, if I'm a middle income country in Latin America right now, I have lots of different developed finance options. I could go to the bond markets, I could raise capital through venture capital firms. Why would I come to the lab right now? What makes you unique? What makes you attractive? And as we think through bureaucracies, right, especially big bureaucracies that can just take a long time to move and may not be as agile as other markets, what is the value proposition that you're excited about and want to put forward here?
So thanks, Fatema. That I think it's a great segue to explain how we do what we do. But tomorrow you will have Juan José Pocaterra, founder of IQA. So maybe that's a better question for him because he came to us for financing. So why did you come to IDB Lab for financing? And we had a great relationship that we've built since then. And I think you'll also hear tomorrow from Grupo Punta Cana from the Dominican Republic. And we funded an innovative project with them to innovate in terms of coral restoration and different business models so that fishermen communities could have a different livelihood. And I think these are very different, but they are examples of also the complementarity between what we do as lab in terms of testing new models, bringing new technologies, and what our sister entity, IDB Invest, does in terms of the larger ticket financing to the private sector. And for example, with Grupo Punta Cana, they have funded their hotel developments in Dominican Republic. So we combine those kinds of instruments together. But in our case, so what is different? It's not just the financing, that's what's different. We do provide capital. We provide capital directly to startups, we provide capital to venture capital funds, we provide both equity and loans, and all the stages that you see there, tickets that could be from $250,000 to $10 million, depending on the entity and the type of instrument, and that are at those stages where the risk is too high for, again, other entities in the system to provide, but not high for a commercial VC fund, right? So why would they come to us? Well, number one, we work with the entire venture capital industry. So having backed up over 110 venture capital funds as limited partners, and our first investment was in 1996 in venture capital. So we've kind of slowly built that industry. At one point, IDB Lab, it was called MIF at the time, Multilateral Investment Fund, represented 80% of the external funding of the VC industry in Brazil. This is unthinkable now, right? Because the industry has grown to what it is today, which you all know. So we work with them. In fact, a lot of our deal flow comes from leads from the venture capital funds in which we are limited partners. We have about 600 startups in that indirect portfolio, and a lot of the leads for our direct investments come from there. So first of all, it's a relationship that is very collaborative, and we help each other. But what we do differently, and it adds not just to us and the entrepreneurs we fund, but it adds to all these other actors in the system, are these number one and number three layers. The first is building these foundations. What does it mean in the first one? It means that you can't just fund entrepreneurs in a vacuum, and that the conditions in Latin America and the Caribbean, as elsewhere in the world, are not the same in every country. So you cannot have like a one-size-fits-all, or just wait magically until the perfect deal comes in Jamaica. You have to build the ecosystem to get there. So we do a lot of work to build those foundations, to make sure that the opportunities for venture capital and for entrepreneurship exist across all these countries. That means working to support the development of nascent ecosystems. 80% of the funding of VC is concentrated in 4 countries. What about the other 20 plus countries? So working to develop those conditions so that you have incubators, accelerators, academia bringing in research, help them commercialize this research and turn it into ventures. Investors. And that's one. 2, it's in developing knowledge and systems and partnerships around new markets that nobody thought about, or problems that people are not thinking about because they don't seem urgent, but are going to be a big headache and fiscal pressure in countries if you don't tackle them properly. Again, very relevant to the conversation around cities, the aging population. We started working on this 5 years ago when policymakers in the region and our main counterparts, who are the ministers of finance, were thinking, why are you talking to me about this? Today you have cities like Bogota that have a birth rate lower than Tokyo. So now it's becoming more real. But we had to start years ago, when nobody was thinking about it, to plant the seeds in terms of knowing who's interested in this, who's going to fund this, and who has the solutions to turn this not into a massive problem, but actually turn it into an opportunity of financial services, of care, and of jobs and entrepreneurial opportunities for people above 60 or even above 50, to say, in some countries. The other piece that is different is the technology, of course. We work a lot on Web3 and enabling conditions for the use of Web3 and blockchain and AI, and we'll touch on that later. And that requires a lot of work with policymakers. So the third layer are the fact that we exist as an innovation and venture capital arm within the umbrella of a multilateral that can influence and can change policy is very powerful, because a lot of the new investments in new solutions, like, for example, the remittances solutions to lower the cost of remittances to less than 3% using a digital on and off ramp with some traditional players, right? Some of the traditional remittances senders, but using USDC or a stable coin as a medium of payment. All of that, you are starting to touch on things that are very, very sensitive policy-wise in various countries. So unless you get the bigger picture and you know where policy is going, you may invest in a company that looks great today at the pilot stage, but then it's never going to grow. So that third piece is also something that makes it different.
I'm going to pick up on one of the points that you just said. So something that strikes me, you said 80% of the capital in VCs is in 4 countries. You guys want to guess which 4 countries? Do you want to share which 4 countries?
Well,
Brazil, I imagine.
Argentina, Chile picking up, but Colombia did surpass Argentina a few years ago. So yeah, it's very vibrant.
So this 80% figure, I wanted to come to this because it strikes me when we think about urban challenges in Latin America and the Caribbean right now, this figure of around 80% comes up a lot. So I wanted to just set a question as we think through the lab's priorities at an urban level in both Latin America and the Caribbean. So you had shared with me earlier, Irene, that in Latin America and the Caribbean, cities house 81% of the population. They generate 80% of the GDP, and that 80% of natural disasters are in cities. So there seems to be a trend line here with the number 80. How do you at the lab think specifically at the urban level around, and especially around, when you think about local governance, as you think about mayors, we're gonna have, I think, is Claudia Lopez coming tomorrow? And I know she'll share a lot from the experiences in Bogota, for instance. How do you think about different models and prioritization at the local level in particular, and ways that our students can really leapfrog and think ahead about meeting urban and regional challenges at the local level?
Great. So first, just to complete the picture in terms of the trends in venture capital investment and how it's concentrated, I think this picture shows the aggregate, but the concentration hasn't changed. So from the peak of 16 billion or so in 21, as everywhere else in the world, of course, it went down. It went down more in Latin America and the Caribbean, so it's about $1 billion a year, about $1 billion a quarter being invested right now. So much, much less as a percentage of GDP compared to where it should be. So we still need to put in and attract many, many more investors around the world and family offices to invest in this industry and to diversify it also in terms of the sectors. When it comes to, so I just wanted to complete that picture, but in terms of the specific challenges in cities, maybe together with what you said, we know that another factor is 20% of people in Latin American cities live in informal settlements. So again, when it comes to a lot of the solutions that are digital, you have to think about accessibility and whether conditions are really the same for everybody to access those services. And 44% of the GDP generated by cities is at risk due to ecosystem degradation. And it affects essential services and it increases disaster cost. So that completes the picture of the diagnosis of what's going on in cities. In terms of the solutions, of course, looking at investments that are cost-effective in terms of building resilience, so adaptation. This could even be things like, even in places as, or in Trinidad and Tobago, we have helped a company grow that is developing vetiver-based solutions, so nature-based solutions that are actually helping the cities be more resilient, building better walls in different types of parts of the city. So looking at alternative solutions to the traditional response that are more cost-effective and are more resilient and that are also more adapted to the local environment. Better, obviously, urban planning, and this goes beyond the role of innovation and venture capital. This, of course, I'm sure you'll hear a lot more from Claudia tomorrow. And in terms of connecting the strategy in terms of the development of the cities with the solutions of that the local entrepreneurs are providing, because some solutions, as we know, can be widely spread and replicated, but some are very, very local. And some are much easier to grow and to respond to these challenges if they are business-to-consumer solutions or business-to-business solutions. But others, like if you are trying to work with the local government or to the national government, take a lot more work, the business-to-government solutions in entrepreneurs. So one of our biggest focus at IDB Lab has been to build a practice of Govtech, of helping government at national and local level more easily interact and adopt the solutions from entrepreneurs, creating better conditions in terms of the contracting, but also better models on the entrepreneur side that are more fitted to work with the government, and we can give maybe some examples later on where that has been most successful.
Can I ask a very dumb question, actually? As you were talking, I was just wondering, and I'm thinking, because I'm always thinking about new models of governance and how all of our institutions are going to need to adapt. If I'm the mayor of a city, can I negotiate and come to you directly to figure out how I can work with the lab? Or would I need to go through my national government, have an MOU? Like, how do you actually work at the local level with a mayor? Does it have to go through the formal national structures back in Washington? Or can I shoot you an email? How does that work?
So,
like, what kind of governance and autonomy do I have at the mayoral level to actually negotiate and work with the lab?
It's a great question. In terms of financing, we would not finance the government as a lab, as an innovation venture arm. We would not finance the government directly, whether it's the national or the local government. But we would work with entities that work with the government to achieve these goals. So, for example, Barbados. President Mia Mottley is a tremendous leader, and she's been trying to find solutions to the challenges of Barbados that involve a lot of leapfrogging. So she created Future Barbados, an agency within the government, but that is autonomous, therefore can work with us. And there is a company with it called the Possibilities Agency, and we're doing developing a hub for health tech innovation with them. So we are not funding the government, but we're in the dialogue with government, so that what we do, again, it's not shooting in the dark. It is part of a roadmap that has the backing of a longer-term policy and strategy of the government, and complements what the public arm of the IDB can do directly with government, which is, for example, an investment loan for improving equitable access to healthcare, that solutions that we incubate and test and scale through lab can then, if they are proven to be successful, be adopted by the public health system. So that's the continuum with the public side that we've built. The continuum with the IDB Invest, or the private arm, and the private arm of other multilateral organizations, and with other private capital, is more straightforward. We fund companies until they are sort of at a stage where they are raising a Series B, so between seed capital and Series B. So once they have already proven, have a product market fit, have some market traction, and have the risk profile, and are entering into their growth stage, we send those leads and share those leads with a lot of our business partners within the international finance community, as well as with private. And finally, there are some hybrids of what I just said. So, for example, anyone from Argentina here? Oh, a lot. Okay, so here in Argentina, we have in Córdoba, with a very forward-looking public counterpart, created under their strategy of Córdoba Govtech. Again, it's tied to the bigger picture and broader actions, a fund that is supporting entrepreneurs that are building business-to-government models. This fund is about $4 million. It's not huge, but you have to start, and they've already invested in 22 B2G Govtech startups in Córdoba that are solving tangible problems from that city and department? Or state, how do you call it? Province, yes.
Well, that's amazing. You know, one of the things I'm just thinking, and I'll just say it, and then you guys can delete everything I just said. You know, as we think through, because this is going to go to my next question, which is around politics and political uncertainty, and what we're seeing right now in both Latin America, but more broadly, we have I find in the development space, we have a hierarchy of governance that it's very difficult at a local level to negotiate deals with multilats or bilats because everything goes through a national government. And if you're at odds with your national government in any way, it becomes, that space is more limited. And I'm wondering, as we think about governance reform, more big picture, if there's a space for more creativity around local autonomy at the local levels. So put a pin in that, we can discuss offline. But I want to talk about politics and get back to the number 80 for a moment, because there's another 80 number here. There's a lot of 80s here, guys, that I found in the research. Erica Muñiz, who was also here at IOP as a fellow, I believe last year, the former minister of Panama, she has this terrific article out there talking about how 79% of incumbent leaders in Latin America have lost elections in recent years. And you have just a tremendous new influx of new leaders, new types, new models, including leaders that are following increasingly. We're already seeing signs from some countries in Latin America taking a page out of the Trump administration's playbook as well. When you're in a development bank, either at the multilateral level like IDB or at a bilateral agency level, a lot of these development investments require years to put together, to do the due diligence in order for you to actually do the work, and then the evaluation and learning that comes with. But when we're seeing so much political instability where those relationships get tested, how at IDB Lab are you thinking about this? How are you thinking about the new political landscape that's shaking up in Latin America right now? Do you have concerns? Are you optimistic? But how do you think about that in terms of trying to get to the finish line of some of the priorities that you've shared with us today?
Yeah, so these changes are more the norm than the exception. No, we have IDB is a 60-year-old plus institution. IDB Lab, called MIF before, is a 31-year-old institution. We've seen these cycles and we've seen these movements. And if there is one thing that gives strength to these institutions is their neutrality, particularly at times like this. So the ability to just keep the dialogue going and be engaged, because we have 48 member countries. 26 are borrowing members from Latin America and the Caribbean. The others are US, Canada, European countries, Asian countries. And we have to serve them all. With respect to the private sector, of course, we follow more market opportunities. And yes, if there are swings in policies that leave vacuums, in terms of the enabling environment, we can step in a little more to ensure that there is some continuity. But in terms of the investments, we will obviously see and adjust as needed, because we want the development outcomes. And with this new funding that Fatema was referring to, our commitment is to reach 47 million people and 1.5 million firms in this period. And we want to do it while generating also reflows from our portfolio that makes us sustainable. So we want to find that intersection of companies and businesses that are achieving those goals, but are actually going to also give us a good return that we can reinvest. So of course, it is going to affect it in that sense, and we have more autonomy to make those decisions.
Well, I won't put you on the spot right now to answer. Maybe the students will. Well, we're going to turn to you for your questions in a moment about the broader political climate, at least here, and I know that may affect, as you think through your board and shareholders, some of the priorities coming up. I want to note just for all of you that one of the things that I love that you had shared with us ahead of time that I just wanted to share with our students here is the case studies that the lab has been working on. So as you're looking for literature, as you're looking for evidence and data, please do check out some of their case studies. The lab recently prepared 2 case studies about AI, particularly around AI-powered education and on financial inclusion. At CID, our big focus this year in the lead up to our Global Empowerment meeting is going to be on AI and emerging economies. So every Friday we'll be doing a Road to GEM series leading up to our GEM conference at the end of April. I'd love to find ways to connect some of those case studies to the work that we're doing as well. So I'm really grateful that you shared that. I wondered if you wanted to say a quick word, Irene, about AI and the prioritization here, because I know it's something that's on the topic that we're talking a lot here.
Thank you. I mentioned earlier that in terms of building the foundations and the enabling conditions, our focus on technology has been primarily on Web3, blockchain, and AI. We do make quite a fair amount of investments also in deep tech, robotics, and that kind of thing. We see a huge potential for that. Often the three of them are obviously combined in the same company or solution. But with respect to AI, if we look at this, so 2022, there were like $190 billion invested in AI worldwide. I think there was so 190 billion private investments in AI worldwide in 2022. Latin America and the Caribbean represented 8.2 billion of that. And of that, about going from the peak of 2.5 billion in 21 to maybe half of that the next year is in AI startups. Not just the AI, like startups that use AI, but really pure native AI startups that are building original models of Gen AI and building with ML and LLM and so on. And again, so we're betting on a lot of companies that are native AI companies, but there are two things that we're doing alongside that, back to the theme that it's not just the financing. And the two things are, one, keeping an eye out for the overall environment and conditions in the countries for AI solutions to really scale. And we know that the more data a model is trained on, of course, the more capable it becomes. And so when you look at the conditions per country, you have countries that are doing everything else right, like Chile and Uruguay, in terms of infrastructure, in terms of talent, etc., but don't have enough data. And then you have countries that have other conditions. So keeping an eye out for that and for the policy framework around AI. And then the second piece is working on frameworks that translate responsible AI policies into practical tools for an entrepreneur. So if you're an entrepreneur that is at the pre-seed stage, you know what to do and how to translate that framework into good governance, into good practice in terms of both the explainability of the algorithm, but balancing that out with the data privacy, balancing that out with, and so the system that we built around that to train and to build the capacity of entrepreneurs to use these tools of good governance and stewardship around AI is through an initiative called FairLAC. And they are open source, so you can all play sort of with the platform. So the case studies were real cases from two founders that used them and got an audit based on that and actionable recommendations for their model. And it's not like once you do it, you check the box and you get the medal and you're done. As you hopefully become more successful with your model and apply it in, telemedicine for recommendations in many more countries, you're going to have and face many more issues. So it keeps growing, but it's part of that practice that we've built and that hopefully will reap the benefits of all of these, but without causing the harm that we all know otherwise can happen. No?
I don't have my glasses here, so I'm wondering if there's an 80% figure there, but you guys will tell me later. In the meantime, we'd love to open it up to all of you. So we've got 4 mics, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes? Come on up. If you'd like to introduce yourself, you're free to, but if you don't want to introduce yourself because it's being recorded, that's fine too. But do ask us your question for Irene to answer, and I can take a couple. We'll start up here.
So I'm Garrison from MIT. So feces helps developing country, but the question is like, it might be helping countries that already have a good prospect compared to countries that actually need more help, like Venezuela or Haiti. So I'm wondering, are there any programs that would be targeting those countries? And also for companies you invest in, are there like focus that private sectors won't actually be funding? Because, well, if private sectors are already funding it, then there's no need for you guys to go in with the money in a sense, right? So are there any like separate functions that you guys will be doing when looking at funding? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. What was your name?
I'm Garrison.
Garrison.
Yes.
Garrison. Okay. Thank you for the question. And they're very good questions. So on the first one, I think we talked a little bit about the adapting to the needs, right, in each country. So clearly our approach is quite different from in Haiti, for example, than it is in a country like Mexico, although Mexico has many countries within Mexico. So our approach perhaps in some parts of Mexico is more similar to what we're doing in Haiti. What do I mean? We are devoting, for example, of the pool of resources that we have, we are deploying about 75% in the form of loans, equity investments, 75% in the form of grants. Why? Because number one, for certain actions, you do need some soft capital to build the conditions, some of the examples I gave. But number two, because in countries that are lagging behind and where the disparities are much, much greater, you need to use some form of blended finance to be able to even start building the first generation of the sorts of companies that we would like to see. And so we are using a lot of innovation in financing for development in those countries. In the case of Haiti in particular, no, we don't have a massive venture capital portfolio. We have a pay-for-results scheme, an outcome-based financing scheme that is completely different, that was based actually in a scheme that we very successfully did in Colombia, including at the level of the city of Bogota when Claudia was there. And so we try to tailor the resources and devote more resources of the softer capital to those countries. And in terms of, I think the second question is very related to what Fatema was asking me at the beginning. Why would they come to us if there is a vibrant, VC fund market? Well, first of all, it is vibrant, but it has huge swings, right? So we are there for the long term. We are there in the ups and in the downs. And now that, DPI is like rock bottom, in terms of getting back investment, right? Because all the funds are keeping their portfolios to find better exits in the future because the market is not there now to sell, is creating a lot of scarcity of new capital. And the only companies that are really raising new capital are companies that are already doing well. So we are trying to fill those gaps, number one, and be there for the long term in the ups. And number two, is that when we go in, we try to crowd in other private investors. So for every investment that we do, for example, through funds as LP, we bring co-LPs. And we're trying to ensure that, for example, we change the metrics of the percentage of investment by family offices, which is very low. But we're working, for example, anyone from El Salvador here? All right. Well, we are going to have a very important event in El Salvador, our annual Innovation and Venture Capital event in El Salvador, September, October. Why? Because there is a lot of, we want to bring attention to those markets that are underrepresented in the VC investment map. but also where we find family offices, in this case, Grupo Agrisal, that is very involved in building the innovation system. And we are working, of course, also on the policy side with the government. So it's not, again, I think the final answer to the question is just that when we go in, it's not just about the money. And so we make a difference even when there is other private capital already flowing in, to make sure that there is more multiplier. And our aim is to, for every dollar that we deploy, at least 6 times the capital in.
Thank you very much. All right, any other questions here? Do you want to just go to the mic? If you could use a microphone, that would be great. Did you have a question?
Yeah. Hi, how are you? I'm Juan. I'm a master's in data science, and I'm from Argentina, so proud to see my country up there. My question is related to this adoption of Govtech that you mentioned, and I love the example of Barbados. And I wonder what's the role of governments in that adoption of technology, and if there's a value and potential of seeing governments as active AI developers and beyond strategic partners with startups.
Irene, are you okay to take a couple questions together?
Yeah, sure.
In the interest of time, is that okay? Okay.
Okay, we'll take a couple more then.
Thank you very much. We'll come over here. Next.
Thank you very much.
And ladies, you're going to have to, okay, oh, wait. So hold on. Here we go.
Thank you. My name is Isabel. I am from Peru, and different from the previous question, I don't see my country here, and I am wondering around that, like, in your experience, what are the main enablers to promote an innovation or startup ecosystem in a country? What are the 3 or more important enablers?
Which country?
Peru.
Peru.
Okay. And can you?
Thank you very much.
Okay?
Yes. My name is Pedro Rojas. More than a student, I'm a founder of a tech firm here in the US. But more than that, I'm Venezuelan. And my question is related to, as a founder, we have seen the willingness of the VCs to invest in these startups in the Latin American country and in also the southern sectors of the US, like Miami, for example, going down from 2021, then to 2022 lower, 2023 last year, rock bottom. How do you see this evolving in the next few years? And do you see any future for private equity rising for the Latin American companies and startups? Thank you.
Great. So with respect to Govtech, so that initiative that I mentioned earlier, Govtech Latam, the one on the left, it's precisely to address the point that you made in terms of how to make people on the government side and government agencies, municipal agencies, engage more effectively with the innovation ecosystem, with entrepreneurs, with startups, with innovative solutions, and adopt them, and not just go to the big techs for the massive sort of like turnkey solution. Because sometimes it's not that. Yes, they need the big techs for cloud services, for this and that. But a lot of time it's very specific things, for example, to smart metering in, or improving the reducing energy losses. So we have a company in Colombia called VIA. It's doing that. It's not the big one-all sort of big solution that maybe a big tech is offering, or the. So Govtech Latam was born out of that desire to be able to reduce the friction of government and entities and employees to work with the innovation system. And we did it in collaboration with the Instituto Empresa, the public tech lab of Instituto Empresa. It's working now in multiple municipalities of Latin America and the Caribbean to create that capacity. And those rules as well, so conditions for ensuring that there is like a smart procurement that allows them in the first place to be able to engage with these companies. So a couple of examples, I think Monterrey in Mexico working to improve public services. So the city developed a marketplace to look at management of citizen requests, for example. But also there are many other things that were developed as a result. A startup called Gobierno Fácil, they dealt with the standardization of data on social programs, efficiency in their management, and as a result of those experiences, Monterrey activated an initiative to reform the procurement regulations to facilitate contracting solutions offered by startups. That's as an example. In Vitacura, Chile, someone from Chile, we also have also very good examples there, and even examples in Antofagasta, in the northern part of Chile, in the mining region, where we have worked in a public-private partnership with funds from the government and funds from the private sector to incubate startups that are helping companies in those sectors become much more efficient, to also not just in deep tech and hardcore technology, but also things like HR tech to ensure better employment for people in that region of the northern in Chile. So those are some of the examples of what has been done. I hope it's helpful, but we are open to engage more in this initiative and to just share the lessons. On the second one, which was related to
startups, enablers for startups. The main enablers for startups.
The main enabler, yeah. So in the case of Peru, and it applies to a lot of the other more nascent ecosystems. For countries where you need certainly institutions that are going to reduce the risk of investing in startups at first, that are going to help with talent, with incubation, with acceleration programs, so that you are not you reduce a lot of the burden on the entrepreneur to build on their own the company or in isolation, but you build economies of scale. So those types of entities in the innovation system that are very much linked to academia. I mean, a lot of the universities, of course, are extremely the most important sometimes players in supporting entrepreneurs through those initial cycles. And then building a network of angel investors, then helping create the first institutional fund that gives credibility that there is enough critical mass in that market. And that's exactly what we've done in Peru with the first institutional fund that we backed up. And since then, more have come up. And we just invested in one called Lucha, which is tackling more social entrepreneurs in Peru. And bringing in clear and attractive rules for investing in this sector. Sometimes the tax regulation, the tax framework, for example, is not fit for this. So you have to have the system in place, the processes, and the governance in place. And that's why the role of these public-private entities is quite important when there's still a lot to do.
And then
I think I missed the
ed tech.
I know the trends, right? Like, where are we going from here? Where are we going from here? A lot depends on the interest rate environment, because if interest rates don't come down, it's really very hard basically to justify sometimes like this investment. So that's one aspect. Second is what Fatema you were referring to in terms of the political, the stability that is perceived, and that has impact in terms of like what's expected in terms of the exchange rate. And you know, in this industry, especially if you're a foreign investor, half of your investment can be wiped out if the exchange rate go down. And so the macro picture, and I think it's going to affect the prospects a lot. And I think we are not going to go back to the 2021 levels, certainly not this year or next year. But we think that with concerted effort, we should at least be able to turn the trend a little bit as markets open up a bit more and there are more exits, and that creates a bit more oxygen in the system. That's what we need.
Great. Well, we are getting to time, so I'm sorry we won't be able to take any more questions. Maybe just to close, could you say one quick word to our students? You have here in front of you many students that will be hitting a job market very soon, either for summer internships or for jobs. Any ways that you see opportunities for them, for IDB, IDB Lab, or just other career advice that you want to send to this entire incredible workforce? You can give them all jobs before you leave. But any kind of quick career advice, Irene, as you think through, you have such an illustrious career from the bank now to IDB. Would love to hear what your thoughts.
Yes, thanks. So if you're looking for an internship, IDB's internship program will open up in March, beginning of March, and the submissions have to be within March. So you will see that coming out soon. And those are for internships that start in June. There are multiple opportunities in Washington, which is the headquarters, or in any of the 26 countries where we have offices, for the public side, for IDB Invest, and for Lab. For IDB Lab, our internship opportunities will be in the country offices, not in Washington. But for the other two sister entities, they will also have a lot of internship opportunities in Washington. If you're looking for a full-time job, it's a good time. It's a good time. The public side is recruiting a lot, and IDB Invest got, alongside the funding we got at Lab, IDB Invest last year got the approval by the 48 governors of the IDB of a $3.5 billion capital increase. This doubles the balance sheet of IDB Invest. So they are going to be recruiting about at least 200 people over the next 2-3 years. Most of these are going to be in the country offices, but at the moment we are recruiting for 20-30 very senior positions in some in headquarters and some in the country offices. So, and I think that represents a unique opportunity, and not all the profiles are kind of investment banking experience or MBAs. In some of those profiles, there is a blend with also public policy. So it's a good time.
It's a good time. All right. Well, we're going to end on that note of optimism and excitement and energy. First, I just wanted to say, Irene, thank you for your public service. We don't often think about the work that you and your colleagues are doing, are helping build, not just deploying capital, but connections with knowledge, with connections and those ecosystems of good governance. That's what it's going to take to build these resilient societies. Thank you you have such an incredible long career of illustrious service. Thank you for your service, and to your colleagues as well. Thank you for coming to be with us in person today on the snowy Boston day. Thank you to all of you for your interest and engagement here. I know we both wish you the best for the rest of the conference as well. I don't know, Bea, if you wanted to say a word of what comes next as we close out this part of it. And while I let Bea do that, a warm round of applause for Irene.